Travel west from the city of Bobo-Dioulasso, across the dusty red plains of Burkina Faso, and you will encounter a striking sight. Millions of ripe cashew apples fallen to the ground, glowing in red and gold beneath the trees. Sweet, juicy, richer in vitamin C than oranges, yet for decades they have been treated as waste. Farmers bend down only to collect the cashew nut beneath the hard shell, bag it, and sell it raw abroad at low prices. The apple, the part with the highest processing potential, is left to rot. This story is not unique to Burkina Faso. It is part of a global trade script. Africa grows, Asia processes, the West consumes. In cashews, West Africa provides up to 60% of the world's raw supply, yet over 90% of the processing happens in India and Vietnam. The profits, cracking, roasting, packaging, branding, all flow elsewhere. Africa remains stuck as a supplier of cheap raw materials, important but replaceable. On May 22, 2025, something unusual happened in the small town of Peni. No parades, no foreign aid billboards, only steel walls rising from the red soil, machines arriving, grinders, fermenters, bottling lines. A $1.5 million cashew apple processing plant officially opened, not for the nut, but for the fruit once discarded. The message was clear. Burkina Faso will no longer export poverty. Backed by President IbrahimTraore and coordinated with the Burkina Faso Council for Agro-Pastoral and Fisheries Sectors, CBF, the factory aims to process 5,000 tons of cashew apples annually. From it will come juice, vinegar, wine, alcohol, products that barely existed at scale inside the country until now. But this is more than an economic project. It is a shift in mindset. For generations, Burkinabe farmers were conditioned to believe their role was limited, to produce raw material while others captured the value. Peni challenges that logic. Value can be created, multiplied, and owned locally. The numbers tell the story. In 2024, Burkina Faso earned $111 million from raw cashew exports. But once processed abroad, those same nuts generated 3 to 4 times more. The difference did not fund schools in Bobo-Dioulasso, did not pay teachers in Ouagadougou, did not build clinics in Peni. It vanished, extracted cleanly by the global supply chain. With the new factory, nearly $867,000 annually will flow directly back into the rural economy through fruit purchases alone. No Indian or Vietnamese middlemen. No rejected cargo at foreign ports. Just steady demand and a rare stability for farmers long accustomed to uncertainty. The symbolism runs just as deep. Choosing to build in Peni, far from the capital and far from trade corridors, sends a signal. Development does not belong only to cities. For decades, Africa's industry clustered around capitals and special economic zones, while the countryside, where food is grown, remained neglected. Peni flips that map. The move also mirrors a broader continental trend. Under the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, countries are being pushed to move beyond raw exports and build value chains at home. Rwanda is investing in coffee roasting. Ghana debates cocoa processing plants. Nigeria wants to refine more palm oil before selling. The question is the same everywhere. Why sell raw for cents, then import finished for dollars? For Burkina Faso, the answer is Peni, a prototype, a model that could extend to mangoes, sorghum, cotton byproducts. Imagine bottles of cashew juice labeled "Made in Burkina Faso" on supermarket shelves in Accra, or cashew wine from Peni served aboard African airlines. This is not a fantasy. It is a roadmap. Yet the greatest challenge is not machinery or money. Machines can be imported. Bottles can be ordered abroad. What is hardest to manufacture is belief. Belief that Burkinabe products can compete with South African juice or French wine. Belief from consumers. Belief from farmers. Belief from policymakers that agro-processing is not charity, but strategy. That is why May 22nd in Peni matters. It was not just the opening of a factory, it was the start of a silent revolution, a declaration that Africa does not have to accept its old role in the global economy, that what was once discarded can become a weapon of sovereignty, and that sometimes the most powerful revolutions do not begin in boardrooms, but in the red soil of forgotten farms. From the outside, the cashew apple factory in Peni looks ordinary. Steel walls, a few trucks passing through, conveyor belts waiting to run. But inside, a different story unfolds, one of technology, people, and a quiet rural transformation in Burkina Faso. The plant is designed to process 5,000 tons of cashew apples annually. What makes it unique is not just capacity, but its proximity to the farmers. Instead of transporting fruit long distances before processing, the entire system sits where the harvest falls. This solves the greatest challenge of cashew apples. They spoil fast. Within hours of dropping, they bruise, ferment, and lose value. Peni's approach, process on the spot, means fruit goes from tree to press within hours. Inside, the facility includes crushing machines to extract juice from the fruit pulp, fermentation units with temperature control to produce cashew wine and vinegar, bottling lines capable of thousands of bottles a day, cold storage to preserve both raw fruit and finished products. Every part of the system is designed not only for speed, but for quality, something Burkina Faso had rarely achieved at industrial scale. But behind the machines stand the people. Most of the staff are young Burkinabe, many experiencing formal industrial work for the first time. Mechanical engineers trained in Ouagadougou returned home to maintain equipment. Food science graduates manage quality control labs. Operators track fermentation cycles, alcohol content, and labeling. Marketers build local brands. For them, this is more than a job. It is a source of pride. For the first time, instead of anonymous sacks of raw nuts, they see bottles labeled "Made in Burkina Faso." Products are no longer cheap inputs, but branded goods with value and identity. The initial market is domestic. Burkinabe consumers can now buy locally produced cashew juice instead of imports from South Africa. But the vision extends further. Unique cashew wines are drawing attention from West African retailers and even boutique buyers in South Asia. Cashew vinegar is being positioned for health-conscious markets and regional cuisines. Yet Peni faces challenges. Its supporting supply chain is incomplete. Glass bottles are imported from Ghana. Labels come from Côte d'Ivoire. Corks and caps are sourced abroad. This raises costs and slows production. The lesson is clear. Real independence requires not just one factory, but a full industrial ecosystem. Packaging, logistics, design, and branding. Consumer perception is another hurdle. Across Africa, imported goods are often seen as superior. A bottle of French wine carries prestige. A local Burkinabe product must earn trust. The government recognizes this and has launched campaigns to encourage pride in homegrown products, integrating agro-processing into school lessons and supporting local food startups. The road is long, but one truth is undeniable. Peni is more than a factory, it is proof. Proof that Burkinabe farmers can do more than grow and sell raw. Proof that a rural town can anchor an industry. Proof that Africa can rewrite its role in global value chains, not just supplier, but producer. When people talk about the Peni factory, they often focus on numbers. 5,000 tons of cashew apples processed each year. Nearly $867,000 injected into rural areas just from fruit purchases, and hundreds of jobs created both directly and indirectly. But numbers alone miss the larger story, a shift in power within the global trade system. For decades, Africa has been trapped in the so-called raw export curse. Ghana exports cocoa, but Swiss chocolate reaps the profits. Nigeria sells crude oil, but imported gasoline drains its budget. Côte d'Ivoire ships raw rubber, but Asian tire companies make the gains. In cashews, Burkina Faso was no exception. In 2024, it exported $111 million worth of raw nuts, while the real profits, from roasting, branding, and packaging, flowed to India and Vietnam. The factory in Peni begins to crack that model by selling not just raw nuts, but finished products, juice, wine, vinegar. Burkina Faso keeps more of the value at home. A single bottle of cashew juice sold in a Ghanaian supermarket can generate 3 to 4 times what raw nuts once did for local farmers and processors. Even more important, Peni creates bargaining power. In the past, Burkina Faso had little choice but to accept low prices for raw exports. With domestic processing capacity, it can say no to unfair deals and diversify markets, from local shelves to ECOWAS neighbors and beyond. This is not just economics, it is geopolitical. The global trade system was designed to keep Africa in a subordinate role, abundant in raw materials, dependent on foreign industry. When a small nation like Burkina Faso breaks that script, it raises a tough question for its neighbors. If they can do it, why can't we? Ghana, though a top cocoa producer, still processes only about 20% of its crop. Nigeria, with vast palm oil potential, exports much of it raw while importing edible oil. Côte d'Ivoire, rich in rubber, sees foreign tire brands dominate its own markets. If Peni proves successful, it could serve as a prototype for replication, pushing other nations to rethink their models. The challenge is not just production, but market absorption. What happens if Peni produces more juice than domestic demand can handle? If poor roads slow transport from Peni to Ouagadougou, how will bottles reach buyers? If customs delays persist across ECOWAS, how can regional trade scale? These are not philosophical questions, but logistical bottlenecks that matter. Burkina Faso's government knows this. Alongside the factory, it is investing in infrastructure and trade standards, better roads, packaging plants, warehouses, and internationally recognized food safety systems. These are the invisible details that determine whether a bottle of cashew juice from Peni can cross into Ghana or reach a European supermarket shelf. Equally important is the cultural shift in consumption. For generations, foreign equals better has been the norm across Africa. But when consumers taste quality local cashew juice, affordable, fresh, proudly Burkinabe, perceptions can change, and once consumer trust spreads, it can be more powerful than policy. The Peni factory is more than an industrial facility. It is a political statement. Behind the economic figures lies a deeper story of power, identity, and independence. For decades, the global trade system assigned Africa one role: the world's raw material warehouse. Every African nation has lived this story. Ghana with cocoa, Nigeria with palm oil, Côte d'Ivoire with rubber, Burkina Faso with cashews. The pattern produced a vicious cycle: abundant supply but lost value, with true profits captured elsewhere. Peni delivers a blow to that script. When Burkina Faso exports not just raw nuts but juice, wine, vinegar, it is telling the world, we will no longer accept dependency. A bottle of cashew wine labeled "Made in Burkina Faso" is not just a product, it is a statement of identity. This matters in a context where economic neo-colonialism still lingers across Africa. While multinational corporations and Asian processing hubs profit enormously, African farmers struggle in poverty. The Peni plant cannot dismantle that system alone, but it challenges the old order, and that makes it threatening to those who benefit from the status quo. Just as important, Peni inspires. A small, overlooked country has become an example for its neighbors. Ghana might ask, why is our cocoa not a national brand? Nigeria might wonder, why is our palm oil not a domestic value chain? Côte d'Ivoire might reflect, why don't our tires carry an Ivorian name instead of Michelin or Bridgestone? Each successful case creates new cracks in the old logic. As those cracks spread, the global trade system built on Africa's dependency begins to weaken. But this is not only about economics or politics. It is about belief and collective imagination. Peni poses a question to all of Africa. Do we dare believe our own products can stand equal to the world's? If the answer is yes, the transformation is not just in factories, but in how a generation sees itself. This is the spirit of Africa rising, a continent not just full of potential, but one taking decisive action. And this rise is not coming from international conferences or aid packages. It is emerging from unlikely places, a small town, a forgotten fruit, a factory floor humming quietly into life. The Peni plant will not change Burkina Faso overnight, but it has planted a seed of self-reliance, pride, and ambition. If that seed takes root across the continent, we may be witnessing the beginning of a new era, one where Africa rewrites its own story.